right, we are live. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Come on in. I am excited to share my reds with you today. If you were with me last week, we did blues, all the blues that I have on my daily palette. And just like I mentioned last week, I have lots of different blues that I use, but the ones that we covered last week are the ones that are pretty much just on my daily palette. And today, this week, we're going to move over into the reds that I use. So I'm going to give folks just a few minutes, or maybe just like a minute, to get in here and we'll get started. And I'm just kind of going through my little process here to check my notifications and check my message, my little chat window, and all that kind of stuff. So make sure that everybody's in here. I need to make sure that making sure that I've gone live in the correct group. Let me do that right quick. Yes, I did. Okay, awesome. All right. Let me. Okay, fantastic. All right, so if you're able to watch the live, that's fantastic. I know 1 p.m. in the afternoon can be a little bit of a challenge for some of you. So if you're catching the replay, that's totally fine. Hey, Judy, welcome. Come on in. So as you're watching through everything, try to, take notes, or if you want to, and of course the replays are always available, but I would love for you to experiment on your own with your own reds, your own blues, all the different colors that you have on your palette. And as we go through, each of my color segments that I have on my palette, what I'm hoping that you'll be able to do is just see kind of how I use the colors, why I'm using them, what I use them for typically, and that type of thing. And then I would love for you to experiment on your own, just to kind of see how your own colors are working for you. And the idea is to really get a little bit more intimate with the materials that you're using, a little bit more intimate with your colors, because as you're working on your own paintings, one of the worst times to find out whether or not a color was a good choice is right in the middle of a painting, and you sort of just drop it in there and maybe it doesn't go like you thought it would, or something like that. And if you take some time ahead of time to really get intimate with your colors, spend some time practicing with them, learning what they do, it gives you a lot more freedom and a lot more confidence when you actually start working inside your own paintings and wanting to experiment with colors. Fine to experiment, but do a little bit of experimentation on the front end, just so that you have some sort of idea of what to expect from that color. And I did share a video here in the group that is over on my YouTube channel that walks you step by step through one of my methods for creating a little sample card that allows you to sort of test a color and sort of put it through its paces. You can experiment with what it does in a variety of scenarios all on one card, and once you have several of those cards together, then you can kind of just create like a little library of your cards of your colors, so that you've got a better understanding of what they do. And maybe if it's been a while since you've used that color, or if it's a color that maybe you just use occasionally, well, you've got a reference card for it, so you can just kind of go back, look at it, refresh your memory on all the different things that color is capable of. Because just right out of the tube and mixing a little water with it, that does give you a little bit of indication about what the color is going to do. But if you really spend some time experimenting with a variety of things, using that color, it really makes it a lot better for when you're ready to sit down and start working on those paintings. Okay, all right, so today I told you that we're working on reds, and I have 3 reds that I use on my daily palette. And I've actually got 2 colors in addition that I use. They're not reds, but I use them like they're reds, and I'm going to get into what that means here right now. So I'm going to flip over and just kind of show you what I've got going on. I'm going to do just like I did last week and do a little demo, kind of exploring these colors, and I hope you enjoy this and pick up some information. If you have questions or comments anytime during the video, just type them in, and I will definitely address those around the end of the thing. We'll have a little Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this around. All right, so here we go. Here's my little work area for today. And I have got several things going here all at one time, but here are the three colors that, these are my three reds that are on my daily palette. And then these are the other two that I talked about that are not reds. I'm gonna get back to that in just a second, but let me show you what I have. I've got Quinacridone Lilac, I have Opera Pink, and I also have Windsor Red. Now I told you guys that I'm a Daniel Smith girl, and I am. I use primarily Daniel Smith, but the Windsor Red is such a favorite, and I just can't let go. You see what big tubes I get, but it's really just got that red that I'm looking for, and I really love to use it. And just about anything that I'm doing, anytime that it's calling for red, I'm almost always digging into that. Now the two colors that are not reds, but I use them like reds, are Quinacridone Sienna, that's a Daniel Smith, and then Windsor Violet. Okay, Windsor Violet is a Winsor Newton color, and again, I kind of lean toward this one. It's just been a favorite, and I know Daniel Smith has a lot of wonderful violets and purples, and any of them that you use or want to use, I have some myself, but I usually just keep that Windsor Violet on my palette pretty much all the time. I'm just going to adjust my camera just a little bit. All right, here we go. All right, so when are we even actually using reds in a landscape? For me, it's typically going to be if I've got florals going on, or a sunset, or something of that effect, or if there's architectural elements in the landscape, maybe a barn or house or whatever the case may be, that might be an opportunity for me to use reds, but primarily it's going to be with natural forms like flowers and and different things like that. And of course, if you're doing more abstraction, you can kind of bring the colors in a subjective manner just about any way that you want to. All right, so let's take a look at each of these right quick, and then I'll kind of spend some time talking about, exactly what I kind of use these for. And I'm going to do a little demo too. So this is the Quinacridone Lilac. Okay, now if you're familiar with the Daniel Smith colors, you'll know that there are several in the Quinacridone series or line of colors. And quinacridone is an optical brightener that goes into pigments. If you research it a little bit, it's kind of fun if you're nerdy that way like I am. It was sort of fabricated for the automotive industry to keep automotive paint colors, long lasting and vivid and all of that good stuff. And so that's kind of where that came from. And if you've used any of the quinacridone colors, you know that they're really, really vivid. And I love that about the Quinn colors, because if you painted with me for any length of time, you know that I really like to start with vivid colors, keep those on my palette so that they're right there in my pocket. But then if I need to mute the colors, then I can. But you can never get a color brighter than, the way it starts out of the tube. But the Quinn Violet kind of reminds me of Opera Rose in a way, but it's a much deeper, heavier color than the Opera Rose, and gives me a little bit more coverage. But it is definitely a magenta, hot pink. It's fantastic. I'm a big fan of the Quinn Lilac. So let's compare it to the Opera Rose. All right, so if you've used Opera Rose before, you know that it is a super vivid hot pink. And see, we're getting it on here right now. Very, very vivid. It almost looks sort of neon, especially, compared to the Quinn Lilac. The Quinn Lilac is a little bit more natural looking, whereas the Opera Rose it's super, super intense. But again, if you're doing a sunset, or if you're doing especially some type of flower, an orchid or something like that, where these colors are really vivid in nature, it's a solid go-to to achieve some of those colors. So you can see the Opera Rose. It's still a hot pink, but it's a little bit brighter, a little bit more vivid. This one has a little bit more muted tone. So it's almost like getting to have two versions of a hot pink. And I find that they serve me really well for a variety of different things. And I can deepen these colors, but you know, you can't brighten them. So that's why I really like to start with one that's already vivid. All right, now for the Windsor Red. The Windsor Red, it's one of those colors, it's sort of a semi-transparent, so you know, depending on how thick you apply the color, I mean, it is just that rich, just that, you know, when you think of red, this is the red that you think of. It's like fire engine red. It doesn't really have an orange tone to it. It doesn't really have a purple tone to it. It is just that quintessential, just what you think of as red. The Windsor Red really gives that to you. So I like using it for that reason. It's pretty neutral. And then if I want to, you know, warm it up, I can add some gold tones into it. And if I want to cool it down into a violet, I can, you know, bring some blue into it. But even when I thin it, you know, you can see when it starts to move into some clear water, it still maintains that nice neutral red, really brilliant, lots of nice coverage. It's just a fantastic, deep, gorgeous, velvety looking red. I just love it. All right, so while those are drying for just a little bit, let's go back to my other board just to show you my other two colors that I use as a red, and I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. If you've painted for any amount of time, you know that when you're using reds, if you want to mute them, darken them, deepen them a little bit, you know, you get taught, you know, to add greens to your reds to darken them, and you can absolutely do that. But I find that for the most part, especially with flowers, if you add greens to your reds to darken them, it dulls the color. It just saps the life right out of it. And we're starting with these beautiful vivid tones, and if we add greens to these, it'll just really suck the life out of it. So I have found that using a combination of these two, depending on what I'm doing, the Windsor Violet and the Quinn Sienna, I will add these to my reds to deepen the shade or to, you know, completely darken it, but it still allows those reds to maintain their vibrant tone. Okay, so let's take a look at these two colors just by themselves so that you can see what they look like. Now, if you've used burnt sienna before, you'll be kind of familiar with that color. Now, the Quinn Sienna is a little bit different animal. It is a sienna, but it is much more vivid because that quinacridone, okay, it has a very vivid tone. So it's that familiar burnt orange tone that that we're familiar with when we see the sienna, the burnt sienna, but with that quinacridone element, you know, that they put in there, it really just gives such a vibrant quality to this color. I'm going to just sort of let it separate a little bit so that you can see, but it has such a really lovely vibrant tone, whereas the burnt sienna, it will have more of a brown, earthy, and it just lacks that brilliance in chroma. You can almost see a yellow halo sort of forming out of it. Beautiful, brilliant tone. And I'll show you in a minute what happens when you mix, you know, this color or the violet with some of your reds and the results that you get. All right, so let's just take a quick look at the Windsor Violet, getting that together over here on my palette. All right, so we've all kind of seen, you know, dioxazine purple, dioxazine violet, Windsor Violet, they all kind of have, and there's even, I think Daniel Smith has a quinacridone violet. You know, they all have that real familiar, super deep grape purple, you know, tone that's just that beautiful jewel tone that is just absolutely gorgeous. It's like, it's the color you cannot mix. You know, you can't get close to it. You can kind of get close to it using your phthalo blue and some opera rose, but it's just never as brilliant as what you can get right out of the tube. That violet is just, the drama is, it's just potent. You know, there's really no way to get close to that jewel tone. But you know, the orange and the purple are sort of in the red family only because it takes reds to make an orange and it takes reds to make a violet. And so that's one of the reasons it helps to use either of these two tones to infuse your brilliant reds, to deepen them, you know, in whatever application you're using, rather than a green, so that you can keep the tones brilliant. If you need them to be muted, then using green is absolutely fine, but I like to have that option of keeping my tones still vivid, even though I need to mute them a little bit. All right, so let me just move this one out of the way for just a second. And again, just like I did with the blues, I will post all of the different things that I come up with today so that you've got it. I'm going to, let's see. Oh dear, I've put my pencil somewhere else besides where I needed it. Let me grab something right quick. Oh, here we go. All right, so I thought, you know, I'm just kind of, I haven't really decided exactly what I was going to do, but I think I'm just going to just do a little bit of scribbling like I did last week, and I think I might just try to do maybe some poppies, something like that, and something that would allow me to kind of take advantage of some of these reds. And so I'm just sort of scribbling a little bit and adding some different things here, and I'm going to come in and add some tone and color, and let's do these poppies. And we'll use all these different reds to see what we can come up with, and I'll show you how, when it's time to darken some of these tones, we'll use those colors that I mentioned, the Quin Sienna and the violet, to deepen these tones instead of greens. All right, so I'm going to start, let's see, I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to actually take my little spritz bottle and just kind of spritz across here just a little. All right, let's go ahead, let's go big. I'm going to go ahead and jump in here with some of this Opera Rose. And I'm kind of using the Opera Rose to sort of be my lighter tone. Opera Rose is a very transparent tone, and I'm using it almost as like a highlight color for some of my poppies here. And just again, that beautiful vibrant pink. It's just one of those, it's just a pink that you can't really mix that color. It doesn't get here any other way except in the tube, you know. And for, you know, if you're a flower lover, you know, there's so many blossoms out there that just require that really vivid tone. All right, so now I'm going to probably get into my my lilac, my Quinn Lilac. Now it's a little bit deeper than the Opera Rose, and almost just, you know, on its own serves as a deeper color, you know, for that that Opera Rose. Just kind of by default, it has just that nice tone. It's got that deeper shade that's really like a cousin to that Opera Rose. I don't really have a reference photo or anything. I'm just kind of playing, and so we'll just kind of see what we get here. I probably should have got a reference photo. It does help. I'm going to wet some of this background a little bit too. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to come in, get that Windsor Red going. You know, just that beautiful. And see, it layers really nicely. I'm working very wet on wet right here, but the Windsor Red, even though it is semi-transparent, it's a beautiful color for layering as well. You can kind of dilute it and, you know, make it a little thinner if you need to, but it does a great job just as a layering color, and it just maintains that beautiful neutral red. But look how vibrant look how vibrant. And if I were to come in and start adding some greens in here to deepen some of these values, I'm going to lose that vibrancy, and that's not what I want. So over here on my palette, I'm going to get into some of my lilac, I think. Just kind of, that's sort of my medium tone out of all these. And let me show you what happens when you mix this with green. I've got a nice green here, and and you think, well, let's deepen it. I can get some greens in there, and it does deepen the color, but I lose. I'm going to come up here next to my Quinn, my Quinacridone Violet that I had mixed earlier, and I want you to see how it dulled. It did darken, it did deepen the color, but it is so dull. It just doesn't have that same life anymore. It just sucked all the life out of it. It gave me that dark value that I wanted, but I just lost how beautiful, brilliant, and vibrant it is. So let's see what happens if we just take some of the Quinn Lilac, and this time let's add a little bit of the purple, just a touch of the purple. See how much more vibrant it just maintained that vibrancy. And so you can see I've got that dark value that I wanted, but it didn't go to brown. It just went to a deeper version of that lilac, and that is exactly what I'm looking for. So now I can kind of come in here and drop that in, and it's not dull. I didn't lose the character and the nature of that vibrancy. It's just wonderful. Now I use the purple, and you can experiment with it and go different levels of purple. You can use different quantities of it to see how deep you want to go. I can even come in here, I'm just touching my brush just with the purple by itself, and I can even just drop some purple in there. And see, I'm not using green, I'm using this purple to really push that red, deeper, but still maintaining all that vibrant tone. Definitely want to keep that. All right, so let's take a look at this. I'm going to get into, let's try mixing a little bit of Opera Rose. Again, you can see how vibrant it is just out here on my palette. Let's see, I'm using a serpentine green to mix with this, and yes, it does deepen it, but it also dulled it. See how it pushed it to, it is a darker version of this, but it just pushes it to brown, and I don't want to push it to brown. I want to keep it alive. I want to keep it vibrant. So instead, if I start with some Opera Rose, and let's see, this time you can do it a couple of ways with this one. You can add either color to these, but I'll start with some purple. All right, so that's purple added. So look, see, I've got the dark value. If you were to look at these, in black and white, these would be just about the same value. Got that dark value I wanted, but look how nice and vibrant it is. The Opera Rose is really receptive to the Quinn Sienna. Let's try that. It gives a really nice shade tone as well. So I'm starting just fresh with some new Opera Rose. This time let's drop a little Sienna in there, the Quinn Sienna. Really dropping that hot pink down. Okay, and it almost gives me that, that darker reddish tone that I might have been looking for, especially if you're trying to do a rose or something like that, a pink rose, and you need that darker shadow color. The violet may be too violet, but if you put a little Quinn Sienna in there, look how it just keeps it vibrant, but you've got that nice shadow color that fits nicely for the Opera Rose. Look how beautiful that shade, it works with that. Very, very nice. Let's try it with the Windsor Red as well. All right, so if I start with my Windsor Red and I add a little bit of that green to it, yes, it's definitely going to darken it and deepen it, but again, it just pushes it more toward the browns. It pushes it too neutral. So let's get that red back out here, and this time let's infuse it with just a little touch of purple. And be careful with the purple, because it's very strong, it's potent, and it'll like to just kind of clear the room. It'll take over. But look how I've deepened this red. Oops, let me put it here. I've deepened the red. I might have deepened it too much. I've deepened the red, but it's still more vibrant than this. It's less brown than this one. It still is just a deep red. And the Quinn Sienna is nice for the Windsor Red as well. If I start with that Windsor and I add a little Quinn Sienna, the Sienna will just keep deepening the color, but it's still very vibrant. I can see that red in there. It's just like a really deep, hot sort of rust color, but there's vibrancy to it. This one with the green, it's really brown compared to these others. I'm going to in fact take some of this that I have here, this red with the sienna in it. I'm going to take some of that and come into my poppies here just a little bit and just sort of add a few little drops of it while this is still wet and working. But look how I can just keep getting deeper reds, just keep building on these reds and getting really deep with the value, but I'm not losing that brilliance. It's really key, really key. All right, so now I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to get a little bit of purple and put it into this red, really dark. I'm going to get some of this red. I'm going to get a little bit of everything. Let's just get a little bit of everything. A little bit more purple. I'm going to get some of the Quinn Sienna too. So I'm making just this rich, heavy concentration. It's almost like this really thick red velvet cake kind of color. And I'm just going to come in here and just adding a little background tone underneath some of these flower shapes in here. And I can even, if I want, I'm just going to get my little dagger brush. I'm just kind of coming in here and adding a few little, I don't know, I'm just playing. I'm going to get just some of my purple. And I'm just kind of negative painting around some of these little shapes that I just made. There we go. And then just for fun, I think I might spritz just a little bit right on the tops of my flowers. There we go. Just having fun with that. Look how vibrant all of these reds are. Not a drop of green in here, and I have been able to bring some really deep, richness and depth to this. So you can imagine if you were, painting a rose or, any other type of flower that really required you to stay vivid, but you wanted to just make sure that you maintain those tones and not lose those colors. Using those really seems to help a lot for me. I enjoy keeping these very, very vibrant. There's lots of experimentation you could do there, but I hope that helps you, and you can see how even though I brought an orange and a purple to the party, it really allowed me to expand on the reds that I already have. So lots of different options there. Let me look and see if I've got any questions. I'm going to turn my camera back around here. Okay, see if I've got any questions. Awesome. Let me look. Actually, it'll be easier for me to look on my computer to see if I have got. So let's see. Elizabeth is saying the Quinn Violet. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the Quinn Violet of Daniel Smith, it gives a pigment name, and it appears to be very much the same as the Quinn Magenta with Winsor Newton, which is very true. You can definitely study out those colors if you want. What I have found is you know, experimentation is key. If you find a color that you like, for instance, you know, green gold is a color that Daniel Smith uses that I love. It's on my palette. We're going to do that on greens. Winsor Newton also has a green gold, and I dislike it a lot, but it's a different color. I don't even think of it. It's not even in the same category with the Daniel Smith green gold for my part, and just I've learned how to use the Daniel Smith green gold a certain way. So experimentation is really key. They'll behave in different ways, and you just don't know until you kind of get in there and try it. So let's see. Elizabeth also says, this is good. This is a why didn't I just experiment moment. Absolutely. So if, you know, red is one of those challenging colors. Red means like commitment. You know, when you put that down on the paper, well, it's just going to be with you for a while. It's not going anywhere. It's when you invite it over, it's the guest that will not leave. So you want to make sure that you're handling it as well as you can and exploiting and taking advantage of, you know, capitalizing on every good feature that it has. And so when we start with a brilliant red, the last thing we want to do is choke it down to where it's now just this, you know, it's kind of like you burnt the toast. You know, it started out good and it was going to be good, but then if you take it too far and you silence those colors too much, you mute those colors too much, then they just don't have as much potency and as much to bring value to the work that you're trying to do. So definitely something to keep in mind. Opera Rose, yes. Thank you for mentioning that. Somebody just mentioned that. Who was it? Tanya. This is something that I found out a while back, and I didn't even realize it. Okay, Opera Rose is a patented trademark name for that hot pink color that Winsor and Newton, they own the rights to Opera Rose. Okay, but the color quality, the pigment itself is made by other manufacturers, including Daniel Smith, but Daniel Smith calls theirs Opera Pink, if you can see that. I'm not sure, that might be backwards when you're looking at it. Opera Pink. Okay, so I misspoke there. I do use the Opera Pink by Daniel Smith, and I do find that, you know, the Opera Rose, the Winsor Newton version, it's a beautiful, absolutely beautiful color. If somebody gave me a tube of, you know, of the Opera Rose, or if I went to the store looking for Opera Pink but they only had Opera Rose, I would totally get it. So they're both interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. Let's see. Let me see if I have any more questions. I'm kind of just scrolling through. If you have any, definitely post them. I had several folks show up. That's awesome. So glad that you're here. Let's see. Tanya's asking, are all of these colors warm? Well, no, they're not. So that's the short answer is no. Now each of these colors, you know, it kind of depends on, you know, the brand that you're using. Okay, so now I'm using, you know, Daniel Smith on all of these on the hot pinks. Okay, I'm using those. You know, Opera Rose, it will, you know, or Opera Pink, excuse me, Opera Pink will tend to be a little bit cooler. Okay, it's leaning toward violet, it's leaning toward purple, which makes it, you know, a little bit cooler, you know, if you want to think of it that way. But any of these, you know, especially with the Opera Pink, you know, I will still use it on a soft white, you know, a soft pink rose. I will start with Opera Pink, even though it's really, really vibrant, but I will cut into it with a little bit of my Quinn Sienna to kind of just make it hush, just kind of tone it down a little bit, but it's still got that vibrancy, and then I'll dilute it a lot with water, and I get a much more glowing, cheerful, sort of soft pink, rather than had I just tried to infuse that, infuse that pink with some green or, you know, neutral tint or something like that. All of those are just going to just strain and choke the color down. Let me know if I answered your question. I I think that that's all I have right now on questions. So anyway, I hope you learned something new about reds, about mixing reds, about not being afraid of reds. And again, experimentation is absolutely key. So use that video that I shared with you on your on making a little sample card for each of your colors. You get to try out like 3 or 4 different scenarios with one color on a single card, and it allows you to just really experiment all the way with it and really see what that color is going to do. We've all experienced using a color for the first time, like in a painting, and we just thought, oh, it'll probably be fine, and then we're like, because it behaved in a totally different way than we anticipated, and now we're like, we've either maybe ruined the painting, or we're trying to figure out what in the world to do. But a lot of times you will find, if you'll experiment with the color, once you start with the color, you may have these sort of preconceived notions about what you think the color is going to look like, but actually once it dilutes, it will have very unique behaviors that you probably and often might not anticipate. So that's why experimentation is so important, because some of those things that the color will tend to do naturally, that's what you need to let that color do. Okay, if a color wants to start turning a little bit yellow once it gets thin, once you've diluted it, then, and you don't want that to happen, then stop using it when you know that it's going to give you that yellow. But if you want the yellow, then capitalize on that. So you want to learn to get intimate with your materials and never get in fights with your materials, because you won't win. You will never win. Always cooperate with your materials, and the best way to start doing that is just to experiment. It's just a piece of paper, and I will say, make sure you're using good quality paper when you're experimenting. Use the same paper that you will use when you paint, because if you use cheap paper when you're experimenting, it's not going to behave the same way as it will on your good paper. So anyway, let me know. Let's see. Yes, Elizabeth makes a great point. The reds go very dull when they're dry, and it is because you've put that green in there. There are times when we do need the reds to really be dull. Maybe it's a low light situation, and where the sun is just not giving us enough color information, and we need that red to really just rest and hide in the shadows. But other times we just need we need those darker reds, but we still need them to sing a little bit. Okay, so I hope this helped you. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching it on the replay, let me know. If you have questions, just post them right here in the group, and go experiment with your reds and have fun with it. And I will see you guys next week. We're going to start working on the greens, I believe, or maybe it was the yellows. I don't even know my own schedule. We'll see which one it is, but I will see you back here next week. So thank you so much for joining me, guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.